Thank you very much. We now turn to our first speaker on the opposition, Yuan Yi Zhu. Yuan is an assistant professor of international relations and international law at Leiden University and a research fellow at Harrison Manchester College, the other place. Yuan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, for dinner, and thank you for your invitation, a very kind invitation to speak at the second university in this country. It's been wonderful so far. It's okay, I also came here many years ago. You should overcome it. But enough for jokes, right? This is a very serious topic. It is literally a matter of life and death. And jokes aside, I think we should treat this topic, this debate, with the seriousness that it deserves, the honesty that it deserves. Now, speaking in favor of this proposition are two very distinguished speakers, and two speakers who I'm sure will achieve great distinction very soon. All four of them look perfectly reasonable. They speak reasonably. They will speak to you eloquently, as the first speaker did. They will speak to you movingly, and they will adopt that fatal reasonable tone. And using that reasonable tone, they will tell you heartbreaking stories of people who have suffered from unbearable pain, who are terminally ill. They will tell you that the only thing which stands between their release from suffering is a cruel and antiquated law which prevents them from receiving help to commit suicide. And having softened you up, having made you abandon your moral reservations, they will ask you, again, in this very reasonable term, right, very reasonable people, but they will ask you to believe in many unreasonable things. And that is what I want to talk to you about. Firstly, they want you to believe that killing someone is a form of healthcare. That there are people whose lives are so wretched that they are better off dead than alive. In other words, they're asking you to believe that there are people whose lives are literally not worth living. Of course, they won't put it so bluntly, and maybe they resent me putting it so bluntly, but if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, that is exactly what they are saying. What they will not say to you, because they know it's going to go down badly, they will not tell you about the history of their movement, for euthanasia or for physician-assisted suicide, or for whatever you would call it. They will not tell you that the origins of their movement are to be found in the disgusting, grubby social Darwinism of the 19th century, which this place did so much to spread around the world like a virus. They will not tell you that the first generation of advocates for the right to die were social Darwinists who literally thought that many people living among us simply should not be alive because they were disabled, because they were feeble-minded, because their lives were worthless. They will not tell you that Dignity in Dying, which is the UK's biggest, most influential and wealthiest pro-euthanasia campaigning group, made in Britain, right, was founded by a eugenicist. They will not tell you that many of their early supporters were eugenicists who praised what was happening in Nazi Germany and elsewhere. That is all very inconvenient to the case. No, sorry.
Point of information.
I'm sorry. But they will say, look, this is all ancient history, right, because we have this modern movement based around the C word, compassion, this made in Britain movement, which has nothing to do with the horrors of the past and nothing to do with Canada or Belgium or the Netherlands. No, it's the Oregon model, right, where people are legally allowed to commit assisted suicide because of anorexia. They say, well, actually, we want something quite different. We want a very restricted model whereby only very few people who are terminally ill, people who are going to die anyway, and people who suffer from intolerable pain will have the right to end their suffering sooner than later. And I'm sure that actually they believe in what they're saying. But it's not true. Because what they will not tell you, and notice how this first speaker passed over Belgium, passed over Canada, passed over the Netherlands to pick a small American state. Why is that? Because they don't want you to know that in every country which legalized euthanasia, the criteria for eligibility have been expanded over and over again. I worked in the Netherlands, the world's first country to legalize euthanasia 22 years ago. When they first legalized it, it was only available to consenting adults who had a terminal illness and who were experiencing unbearable suffering. So basically what they say they want, right? Perfectly reasonable, right? Today, in the Netherlands, it is illegal to kill disabled infants who are born disabled. It is legal to kill children over the age of 12 as long as their parents give consent. It is legal, indeed, to kill people with dementia who have given advanced consent, who don't remember they consented to be killed. I see there are some people who are jeering, but so let me tell you how a few years ago, a Dutch woman suffering from advanced dementia was held down, screaming, by her own doctor and by members of her own family in order to be injected with a fatal poison, the same poison which is used in America to kill prisoners on death row. The doctor who did this was acquitted because this was legal. This is what is happening today, an hour away by plane.
More information.
I'm sorry. And now the Dutch government actually wants to extend even further. They want to allow children between the age of 1 to 12 to be eligible for euthanasia. They also want elderly people who feel that they have lived out their lives, who are otherwise healthy, to you live to the ripe old age of 65 or 75, or whatever it was, and you're just bored with life, and the government will pay you to kill yourself, because that is cheaper than pension. Why is that? Why is it the case that in every country which legalized euthanasia, the remit of this thing has expanded further and further away from the terminally ill? And the answer is very simple. It's because they speak of it as a human right, the right to die, as the motion today states. Because human rights are good, right? Everybody loves human rights. Everybody wants to expand the empire of human rights as widely as possible. But if dying is really a right, what reason, what excuse do we have to limit it to the terminally ill? Are we not depriving the healthy of the right to die? Are we not depriving the disabled of the right to die? Is that not discrimination? And that is exactly what happened in Canada, another country which the opposition doesn't want to talk about, right? Let me tell you how, I'm sorry, I must make progress. I must make progress. In 2017, Canada legalized the right to die for terminally ill adults who are close to death. That was in 2017. It took 2 years for a Canadian court to find this law to be unconstitutional. Why? Because they said this was discriminatory to people who are disabled, who are sick, but who are not close to death. This was a violation of their human right. And of course they were right, this is discrimination. If you say something is a right and you forbid 90 to 95% of the population from accessing it, that is discrimination. That is the very definition of discrimination. And what's happening today? In Canada today, anyone with a serious illness or disability with no prospect of improvement can choose to die with assisted suicide. Mental illness is not included yet, although the government has promised and has legislated to legalize assisted suicide for mental illness, because it would be discriminatory to do otherwise. In fact, until a few months ago, if you were suffering from a mental health crisis in the province of Saskatchewan in Canada, you could call the a health advice helpline, and there was one option for people who were feeling suicidal and who wanted to receive help, and there was another option for people who were feeling suicidal and who wanted information about how to die at the hands of a doctor. Think of this. What sort of message are we sending to people who are depressed, to people who are suicidal, if we say, well, you can have help, or we can help you to end your suffering?
Point of information.
Yes.
I think you're mischaracterizing the situation in the sense that when you're approved for euthanasia, it's a very long process, which includes multiple consultations with psychologists, psychiatrists, etc., over a long amount of time, so that you know and you've thought about it. It's not as if people are acting on a whim, which is how you're making it seem.
Well, actually, in Canada, the waiting period has been abolished by Parliament. There's no waiting period. You can pick 2 doctors or 2 nurse practitioners. If the first 2 to whom you go to do not want to send the form, you can go to somebody else. So I'm afraid that is simply not true, as much as I wish it to be true. But anyway, let's come back to the case of the proposition. They will ask you to believe, and I have repeated this over and over again already, right, that the right to die will come with safeguards, that no one is going to be pressured into killing themselves. What they do not mention is that as we speak today, people in Canada, where I'm from, are killing themselves because they're deaf, because they are in a wheelchair, and because they have allergies. And surprise, all of them have had recourse to assisted suicide because they were also poor. One woman in Toronto, Sophia, killed herself because she had an allergy to cigarette smoke and to household cleaning products. She was disabled, she couldn't work, the government wouldn't pay her enough to fund affordable housing. And what did she do? She went to a doctor, and now she's dead. We only know about Sophia because before she died, she asked her family to go to the press to tell the world that this was happening in Canada, a country which, by the way, is wealthier than this one, a country which prides itself on being civilized. And yet we are still here today debating this ridiculous motion. I'm sorry. The proposition will not tell you this because they want you to believe that this is about the A word, autonomy. Because once the illusion of autonomy in dying is gone, so does their case. It shatters into pieces. It is not by accident that the people who are featured in pro-assisted suicide advertisements are all middle-class, well-off, articulate people. They don't want to show the grubby reality that assisted suicide in Canada is killing the poor, the disabled, the people who have no means to fend for themselves, people that we don't come into contact with, and who live and die at the margins of society. Like Sophia, who died because she had allergies. They want you to forget, at the end of the day, they want you to forget that we live in a world which all too often does not care, doesn't value the lives of the poor, of the sick, of the disabled, which views them as a burden and a taxpayer. Remember that the fact that we are taking care of, or that we take care of the elderly and the disabled in public's money is a new phenomenon. Remember that the welfare state is new. Remember that the welfare state only appeared within living memory and that it could easily go away. Most human societies in history have killed people they consider to be weak and undesirable. And if you support this motion, the risk is that we will return to this world of social Darwinism, this world of cruelty and killing. I urge this House to oppose this motion. Thank you very much.